Welcome back. The Constitutional Court says it will hand down the Phala Phala judgment within a month. The registrar says preparations for the matter are at an advanced stage. The ATM's Vuyo Zungula joins us in studio now for his party's reaction. Bab Zungula, thank you so much for your time and for joining us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's an absolute pleasure. So 480 days later, the Court is expected to hand down the judgment within a month. What do you view of this prolonged wait, especially in terms of just the impact on public confidence?
The citizens of this country must be really, really worried. If you're going to have a constitutional court that takes over 500 days to issue a judgment based on principles and precedents that have been already set, it's not the first time the court is asked to adjudicate whether Parliament failed its constitutional obligation of oversight or not. They've done so on the Public Protector Kandla report. They issued a report on that particular case within 50 days. On the secret ballot case, within a month. But for now, to have over 500 days, South Africans need to be really worried because institutions such as the courts, it depends on the perception, the manner in which they conduct themselves. It leads to whether people believe in the integrity of the courts, believe that, they are not biased and they just rule according to the law. Now, to take 500 days on already established principles, for us as a party, we're really concerned that we do not have a court that is advancing and protecting the Constitution. Because even by their own rules, there is a norms and judicial standards for judicial officers, which I think it was Chief Justice Mogoeng, 2013 or 2014, that guideline is saying judgments must be issued within 3 to 6 months. In this case, it is 16 months. Now, what moral standing does the justices of the Constitutional Court have to chastise the lower courts if they take extended periods of time to issue judgments? So that is the crux of the constitutional crisis we have in the country.
So just on that point of perception, I mean, the EFF leader, Julius Malema, had also expressed concerns about this delay, and he suggested political interference. What's your perspective on the influence of political pressures, especially in high-profile cases such as this?
Definitely there's political interference here, because it can't be that a court that has dealt with similar issues, is failing to timeously issue a judgment, especially in the case of there's 2 cases here when it comes to the crisis of the state in our country. When it comes to the president, there's an accusation or allegation which is backed by an independent panel report that there was abuse of power and violation of the Constitution. Therefore, the executive is compromised. When it comes to Parliament, Section 42(3) of the Constitution is very clear. Parliament must scrutinize and oversee executive action. There's an independent panel report which says there's a case to answer. Parliament takes a decision not to scrutinize, meaning they take a decision in violation of Section 42(3) of the Constitution. Now we would expect the Constitutional Court, which is the last arbiter, when the executive has failed, when Parliament has failed, a Constitutional Court which does not look at political players, they look at what is in the law, what is in the Constitution, and what is in their own rules. They've basically failed in all fronts. So we should be worried when it comes to this particular issue, because the Reserve Bank had some flimsy excuse about a transaction not being perfected. SARS said everything is okay. Currently, in the Madlanga Commission, we hear about Sergeant Kosi, who's arrested now because there was some cash that was found in his mattress. It is South African rands. Now, in the president's case, it is foreign currency that has not been declared in the value of millions. With Nkosi, it was 50,000. With the president, it is millions. Nkosi is arrested. Nothing happens to the president. The question would be, do we have a justice system that is just applying the law? Or if you've got political power like the president, you can basically get away with murder. In this case, our view is that the Constitutional Court has protected Mr. Ramaphosa, because if it was not the case, they would have ruled in line with what the Constitution requires, not a political consideration that makes them take over 500 days to issue a judgment.
So in preempting of what then we will hear in the next month, it doesn't seem as though the ATM is confident that there would be accountability coming from that judgment.
Not at all. If you look at how SARS, the Reserve Bank, especially SARS on one front says those dollars were not declared, meaning they're in the country illegally. Yet they are saying that the finances of Ntabanyoni Close Corporation, which is the one that owns Phala Phala, on their side, everything is okay. How can you have undeclared dollars in your possession and you've not banked them, but however, you've got a tax clearance from SARS? The Reserve Bank on one side the laws when it comes to foreign exchange regulations is very clear. Declare foreign currency within 30 days. With Mr. Ramaphosa, it was in excess of 30 days. They say the transaction was not perfected. Now, if you think about it, when it comes to money laundering, obviously you don't declare funds that you have laundered. Now, you would expect institutions to really want to get to the bottom of things, really ask questions, probing questions. But if you're going to have public protector, SARS, the Reserve Bank, even the NPA washing their hands, we've got a crisis in our country. And the crisis is, when it comes to Mr. Ramaphosa, it means the justice, we can never have accountability on his front. But other people like me and you, then it means those people can be arrested, just like we have with Sergeant Nkosi. Now, the constitutional questions we need to ask ourselves, what then is the motivation for South Africans, firstly, to abide by the law if the first citizen is able to violate the law, but the other institutions, they see nothing wrong with it? And at the same time, why should South African citizens have confidence in our judiciary if they are going to take 500 days to issue a judgment on a simple case? Because the case that was heard in 2024 November was very simple. Did Parliament fulfill its constitutional obligations? The answer is no, if you look at what the Constitutional Court had previously adjudicated on when the facts were almost similar. So that is the constitutional crisis that we have.
So should the court's judgment find that Parliament mishandled the processes, what would be the legal and the political implications for both the President and the ANC?
There needs to be an impeachment inquiry. And we want to stress this point. In 2022, when the matter was debated and voted for in Parliament, it was not to impeach Mr. Ramaphosa. It was to set up an independent committee that will look at the fact in order to make a determination whether there is wrongdoing or there's no wrongdoing. Now, any logical person would be, but what is wrong with Parliament actually scrutinizing what was before Parliament at that time? Currently, we had the ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee, when it was set up in Parliament, it did not decide whether Minister Mchunu was wrong or Minister Mchunu was correct. It said, let us set up a process that will look at the facts in order to make a determination on whether there is wrongdoing on his side or everything was fine. Similarly, back then, that was what Parliament was decided on. Now, to have Parliament or the ANC abusing its majority to decide their president is beyond any form of scrutiny. In our view, it was a violation of Section 42(3) of the Constitution, because that section says Parliament is obligated, meaning it's not something that they can choose whether to do it or not to do it. Parliament is obligated to scrutinize and oversee executive action. And also, it is not me who just said there's a case to answer. There's an independent panel that issued a report that is coming from a reputable former Chief Justice, who even Mr. Ramaphosa himself provided evidence before that panel. And the outcome of it was there's a case to answer. If there's a case to answer, what is the logical step to do? It is to inquire even more or scrutinize. That is what Parliament failed in 2022. And come now, 2026, almost 7 years later after this entire thing started, there's still no answer. So that is the crux of the crisis that we're in. So
Vuyo, in less than half a minute, do you see this case shaping the future of constitutional accountability, especially the relationship between the judiciary, Parliament and the executive?
Definitely. If the Constitutional Court is going to rule in accordance to the Constitution, just like they did with the Nkandla matter secret ballot. They were lauded that they were independent. But in this case, if they're going to protect Mr. Ramaphosa, they're going to set a precedent, because who stops the next president from doing so and then coming back and said, judge me the same way you judge Mr. Ramaphosa? I can have millions of dollars that are not accounted for over the sale of animals that were never even collected. Therefore, it is the same thing as a previous president. In fact, even Nkosi can do so. Even the other ministers can do so, or all public officials can do so, because the case of Mr. Ramaphosa will set precedents when it comes to how people in the public sector are judged when there is wrongdoing on their front.
All right, well, it's a month to go for us to see...
If it happens, because with us, we wrote a letter to the registrar.
Yeah.
They responded on the 4th of February. They said they're going to issue the judgment as soon as it is practically possible. That was the 4th of February. So we're looking, we're hoping that the month, as they indicate, will really be a month.
Well, we certainly do hope that it would be in a month. I mean, so much, as you mentioned, is weighing on this, especially the precedents that could be set with whatever judgment comes out of this. Vuyo Zungula, thank you for your time and for joining us this evening.